in this space, certainly we have seen a lot of the banking industry realize that they could actually use this technology and not just fear it. And, we have this, and I certainly bring this view of banks as giant caricatured dinosaur evil things. But within them, there's just normal people, right? Swept up in the institutional inertia of this beast. But there's people who, some of them get it. They get that this is exciting and interesting and disruptive. They want to use it within the banking system, and they're trying to work from within to get people interested in this. And we're seeing more and more of these organizations gradually try to find ways to adopt this technology, to streamline and to improve banking itself. This is very similar to what we saw in the early 90s when the internet started happening much more mainstream. The phone companies at first fought it tooth and nail, right? They fought the service providers, tried not to give them access to their lines, tried not to kick them off and not give them DSL networks at the time. They fought it at the FCC. They tried to control it. And eventually, they all became ISPs, right? So eventually jumped on the bandwagon and used it to improve their own infrastructure. Now, if you make a phone call on a regular traditional old phone, your phone call is going over the internet. Almost 90% sure that it is. So they wouldn't let the internet be on the phone network. Now the entire phone network is on the internet.
Whoa.
It flipped. That's called infrastructure inversion. In the early days of the automobile, they wouldn't let automobiles in towns because they would disrupt the horse traffic, right? And they had all kinds of weird laws, including in the UK, they passed a law which required someone to run ahead of the car with a red flag, called the Red Flag Act. That did wonders for the British automobile industry, which was 20 years ahead at the time and then wasn't.
Wow.
That kind of reactionary behavior is very common in new technologies. And then infrastructure inversion happened. Eventually, the thing that was considered impossible, that roads would be paved to make automobile travel practical everywhere, happened. And horses were quite happy to ride on paved roads, right? Whereas for automobiles, it was almost impossible to use in a rutted, muddy road when you have a forward-wheel drive vehicle trying to compete against a four-hoof drive animal. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in those early days, they pointed at that, said, look, this thing is never going to work. Automobiles are never going to happen because you don't have the infrastructure. But if you have the need, infrastructure happens. And we've seen that with the automobile. We've seen that with electricity. We've seen that with the internet. We've seen that with all of these technologies. And now we're going to see it again with money. Because if you have this technology, building the banking institutions on top of this is easy. But making Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, making the internet of money play by the rules of the old banking system is almost impossible.